So this is all kitchen supply, probably commercial kitchen supply, but you can buy your own stuff there too. You can see all kinds of cutting boards, different sizes, different steamers, different kinds of baskets for things, different size scoops out, whatever those things are called. Kinds of chairs and things for your restaurant or your house or whatever. But often these are the size seen in restaurants, although these are prettier than them right there. Just wandering about, I've got myself back to that little park I was at last night, actually. I think the street that I make a loop on is that corner right. Okay, where I've just arrived is the Tomb of Emperor Jingdi. Taking bus 602 to Beiguan, 619 to Zhangjibu, and there tour bus 4. Not really the idea of a tour bus, but that's it. Been excavating for 30 years. Graveyards, southern and northern burial pits, ritual buildings, satellite graveyard, criminals graveyard, ancient mausoleum town. To the west of them lie the emperor and empress's tomb, northern and southern burial pits, and the remains of ancestral construction. Protection Hall of Burial Pit. The sun was just beginning to shine through in Xi'an, but out here it's still very foggy, although there is a sun visible as an orange, light orange disc. This is the entrance to the underground pit. This is a model of what this tomb must look like at one point in time. It's warm and muggy in here compared to cold and foggy outside. We're required to put on these little booties to apparently protect the site, and we continue to go down this ramp and deeper into the ground. At this level, we're apparently looking at excavation pits, of which there appear to be at least 2 big ones, and several more roaming around. Down in the pits are the remains of jars, whether they've been replaced or whether those are original excavation, I don't know. And then this arcs all the way around, and presumably over there somewhere, I think over ahead of the camera now, we go down still another ramp. Here it looks like a pit with some of the model soldiers in it. And still another pit. I am assuming that this is the way they were excavated. And I'm not sure what the connection of these figures is to the Xi'an museum I was at yesterday. Although these don't appear to be warlike figures, they merely appear to be human figures, as you can see. Here in Pit 9, you see more artifacts. Again, don't know whether these are as they were found. And presumably we can walk over to the other side, so we'll have still another view of these pits. I don't know if those were square vessels or not. But this is a fascinating way to display it. If this is how these items were found, it's interesting how nicely they're laid out, and the different patterns. Notice their rectangular form of those 6 pots on the right, and yet a triangular form of the pots on the left. This is an excellent way to display such a archaeological site and find. In this portion, the glass on the floor allows us to video down into directly down into the site, which is novel, of course. Probably a model chariot. And there are the outlines of, doesn't look like horses. Ah, yes, it does too. Really brilliant way. Notice you can even see the genitalia on these models for some reason. But what were they actually used for? Here what seems to be a somewhat larger chariot. Maybe not. These look like pigs, and maybe they are. When you're buried, of course, these people did it. Your goal is to take with you into the afterlife all that you will need and that you're used to and familiar with and prize from the worldly life. What's interesting is that the horses and the chariots are down at this end, yet there still are animals, still figurines. Were they attendants? Is there some rationale, or what is the rationale for each of the pits being somewhat similar in contents? But here we notice the bowls are jumbled, not precisely assembled as in that other. What explains that? And here a dominance of these human characters. And they're very stylized. They seem very much the same. Unlike the terracotta warriors that we've seen, plus the ones we saw yesterday, they are all clothed in some kind of specialized armor or clothing. These appear to be nothing more than dolls awaiting some future embellishment. And so far it's just pit after pit of the same. Why these pits are shorter and these longer, does it simply indicate that the archaeologists found the efforts redundant and so moved on to other pursuits? Or did this somehow represent something different? I see what seems to be different there, particularly in the light. It appears to be antlers of perhaps a small deer. Here we have jars that still have the lids on them. Presumably the contents of these or other similar jars have been analyzed. And as this sign indicates, apparently here were found the remains of grains. Of course, in the afterlife, you're going to need an ample supply of grains. I suspect that what was put down here was representative of what was going to be required in the afterlife, which presumably was eternal. But if that's the case, why the tremendous redundancy of figurines as well as chariots? Is it possible that each pit actually represents a different ruler or member of the ruling family? Here we see how the warrior or the figurines would have been, at least initially, positioned upright. Whether they were filled in with dirt at the time or that took place over time, don't know. This pit fully excavated out. See if we can poke through the gloom and see what that is. Doesn't appear that we can unless it's something to do with a chariot. Now here what's interesting is that there are two, at least, very evident elevations within the pit showing similar artifacts. That's pit number 14. It would be interesting when I get home to see if I can find more informative information on this. I'll video this, but I'm not sure if it's legible, so I'll try to extract from it. Adjacent to the south of the sacred way of the Emperor's tomb, a length of 8.2 meters, the pit was the smallest of the 10 burial pits exhibited. There were originally 3 wooden vehicles and horses, but they have rotted. Besides a small number of pottery figurines, tens of carriages and harnesses, irons, lamps, adze, spears, and so forth have been excavated. The tortoise-shaped silver seal unearthed here bearing the inscription Zhongzhen Jijin indicated that this pit was possibly the department of Zhongzheng of the central government at the time. In the Qing and Han dynasty, Zhongzhen was the official responsible for the royal family affairs, and the post was mostly held by an imperial member. This is a reconstruction of what we're seeing in the way of the horses and the chariots, and some of the figurines would have represented. Extrapolating from this, is it possible then that the figurines were all dressed in linen and that simply rotted away? But how interesting to put genitalia on them, apparently.